Alright, Plinkers, we're gonna go ahead and reassemble this guy. Um, if you haven't watched my full breakdown disassembly videos, please go watch those because I give tips and tricks about how to disassemble this guy without breaking any parts or losing anything, and maybe the unnecessary things you don't need to do. The part one, I went over how I prefer to clean and make everything mechanically sound so I can reassemble it and have confidence all my mechanical parts are not a variable in my plinking sessions. Um, yeah, the only thing I'm gonna say to start off is there are not many. You don't need to do this in this specific order. Everything can be taken apart and disassembled separately, but there are a few parts that need to be you need to keep in mind and put them in the proper order, so you don't need to backtrack and take anything out and reassemble it and do a couple of takes. So we're going to start right away with some of those pieces. So your buffer, oh, that's not the buffer retainer pin. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I was fiddling around. It's already in there. See, I was already ready. So your buffer retainer has to go in first because it's going to get captured by your fire control group, and then your pivot pin for your bolt catch release. I like to put it in because the notch here right there, that's going to prevent you from putting that pin in straight. So we're just going to go ahead and seat it. It's still going to be loose. We're just going to leave it in its hole, and we're going to insert the fire control group um, with this pin already in place. We'll deal with the bolt catch release later. So your buffer retainer is in. Get your fire control group in. You might, because of the spring, you just got to line it up with the hole. There we go. Fiddle with it a bit. It should go in snug. There should be no wobble. Your pin should bounce up and down, and your pivot pin for your bolt catch should be still there. Now we're going to go ahead and pop in our first pin. Oh, that's going in easy. Oh, this guy can almost completely press it in. It's not an issue. Just give it a couple taps. Make your pin flush with the frame with your receiver. Make sure there's nothing protruding, nothing's broken, everything's snug, your pin still works. Alright, so that pin's in. That's the mechanical part holding your fire control group to the lower receiver. So now we can start and assemble the mechanisms that actually go through your fire control group. So we'll start with the magazine catch. Get that rod through there. Here's a spring alert. Now you want to push down on your magazine release button so you can screw around your magazine catch, but you don't want to press it too deep. It can get caught on the inside between the bolt carrier group. Oh, I'm going to change fingers for this guy. Between the bolt carrier group and your fire control, sorry, not bolt, the fire control group and your lower receiver, it can get stuck right between the plastic. So you want to push it in enough to get your threads in there, but not too deep so that it gets stuck. And that's why we left the paddle off, because the paddle is you'll have to push deeper to get the paddle in. Now you can pull on it a bit, not too much, just get it over those. Well, I think we're at the end. So bring it back, go check on the other side, and make sure the pin is not protruding from your magazine, from the button. Make sure it works, make sure everything gets out of the way. There we go, that's into place. Now we got our detents to insert, the fire selector and the rear takedown pin. So let's go ahead and get that fire selector in. Gonna have to twist it a bit. There we go. The cams are gonna notch into place, and then you should end up in the safety position. So you want your fire selector to end up flush while you're in the safety position, and that's going to ensure that your notch, and also it's on safety, and your notch for your detent is going to be aligned. Now we can go and put in the rear takedown pin. Okay, pop it in and out. Let's get the groove for the detent in line with the hole. You can just visually align it, and then now we can insert our detents. I'm just gonna, yeah. Oh no, I put it in straight. Never mind that. Okay, fire selector detent. Now the detent for your rear takedown pin, you can insert it now because the hole is pretty deep. Maybe push on it a bit, make sure it's in the notch and your rear takedown pin doesn't twist. So if you push down on the pin, on the spring just a little bit, you can make sure your detent is in the notch there. So that's one thing you need to make sure of. Now the fire selector detent is sticking out, so we're gonna go ahead and put the spring for the fire selector detent right in the pistol grip. And also the nut for your pistol grip, you're gonna wanna make sure that's in the slot, because there's a backtrack step if you miss it. Now I hold both parts firmly and I'm not just wedging them in, I'm just easing it over. There we go. So you get over the notch. Now once you're over this notch here, you want to make sure that your pistol grip stays flush with this surface, and we're going to push vertically into our detents. So the rear takedown pin spring, we want to make sure it pops into this hole on the pistol grip. By the way, on the Bushmaster, there is no hole on the pistol grip. It's on all the others, but the Bushmaster grip does not have a hole there. So just make sure you're pushing vertically and you're not kinking your springs. Make sure your spring pops onto the detent properly, and then you can go ahead and continue to push vertically till your pistol grip is snug. Now we're gonna go screw that down. The long Phillips. Remember to go into your pistol grip aligned with the pistol grip so you don't cross thread anything. There, you're gonna go seat it. You can feel it's almost there. Make sure your pistol grip's firm, and you don't have to over torque this, but you don't want it to come apart. So make sure everything's working. Okay, rear takedown pin, fire selector, everything's clicking. Listen to those beautiful mechanical parts clicking. All right, I guess we can put in our bolt catch release right now. Here's another spring alert. Now we're gonna just push out our pin a little bit. There we go. Now it's captured there. Put in your spring. Ease in your bolt catch. You can probably manually push this through a little bit. Here we're gonna rest our lower receiver there. This part, maybe your pin size doesn't really matter. Just make sure it's long enough and you got a secure grip and you're comfortable. Yeah, we're gonna go directly on the table. Just a couple of taps. Make sure your pin goes flush. There we go. That's installed. Now we can put this to the side for now. Now here's another part where I want to give a small warning. So part numbers go to the left. We're going to make sure our part numbers are pointing to the left. We're going to pop this in. Make sure you keep it aligned. You should hear it. It should pop into place. Oh, nope. There we go. All right. Now I like to make sure your rubber part, you just take your long Phillips and you just make sure that rubber buffer, I don't know, I guess it's an impact absorption thing, or maybe it's just for noise. But you want to make sure that's all the way down, because if you're not being careful, you'll punch through that rubber piece and you'll make holes in it. Now on this part, you need to make sure that the guide rod for your buffer and your bolt buffer stays seated all the way, because it can bounce out when you're punching in your pin. So let's get this started. We're just gonna give it a couple of taps. Keep an eye on the guide rod. Make sure it stays in there. If you see it popping out, just make sure you push it back in. There, see, I was able to notch it in a bit. I might even hold it with the guide rod. There we go. See, I'm holding that guide rod in. Alright, that looks good. Oh, there's a slight jiggle. I'm going to give a couple taps to finish off this pin. There we go. Guess I don't need to, I'm not punching anything out. There we go. Now this pin, right, if you have the DPMS, you got to make sure it's in your lower receiver while you do this, but all the other models, you have the freedom to do it at different steps. Okay, so this hole here is for the A4-Ps, and that sleeve they got on there, the brace, you'll have to punch in that later when you put in your brace. And now we can go ahead and pop this guy back on to the lower receiver. There should be no debris in the pinhole, and we're gonna go ahead and pop in the next pin. Make sure everything's firm and flat so nothing jiggles. When you tap on your pins, make sure your hammer's flat against it, so you don't want to hit it diagonally if you're not using punches or if you're not used to it. Just gonna drive this home. Oh, I could give it another little tap. There we go, got that centered, that's in there, guide rod's still there. Sweet. Now, let's pop in our buffer springs and the bolt buffer and its spring. Now here's another spring alert, guys. You want to make sure that these springs don't crisscross with your guide rod, because if you crisscross them with your guide rod, then you most definitely will kink these guys. Now I like lining up my groove on the side kind of thing, because there is like a flat surface, and I'm gonna pop this in. I'm gonna do the same thing as I did to disassemble it. I'm just gonna take a small flat screwdriver, push down the buffer retainer pin, and slide this guy in there, because that pin does get caught on your spring, and it can be slightly annoying. Once it's popped back, there you go, that's installed. You can play with your pin so everything's functioning, and there's your lower receiver. We're going to pop in the front pivot pin so we don't lose it. And there you go. Everything's functioning as it should. Right? Let's move on. Okay, so I guess bolt carrier group. This guy, there aren't many parts to this. You got your striker, your firing pin assembly. Like I mentioned before, we're gonna make sure that the part numbers are on the left side. Pop that in its slot. Sorry, I think I'm keep going off camera. Make sure it's seated all the way. It looks a bit weird. I thought it would go deeper. There we go. It's in all the way. Check your screws. Make sure there isn't anything in the holes. And here we go. This guy is in a hard step. Okay, while I'm screwing these in, mechanical tip: if you don't want to just jam your screws in the hole and start screwing. If you want to find your thread, you just you go counterclockwise. You just back your screw out until you hear it click, and until you hear the thread fall onto the, and you could feel it and hear it when you're paying attention. And then you can start driving home your screw. That way you don't strip any screws, you don't strip any, you can reuse your parts and you don't have to worry about replacing anything. And you can pretty much do it as many times as you want. Alright, so this Phillips I think is not going to get all the way to the bottom of this seat for these screws. I'll swap that out. Finish it off with a smaller size. I'm going to be careful because this Phillips is a bit jiggly in those slots. It's a bit weird they didn't make the hole big enough for the proper screwdriver. Go ahead and drive those screws all the way till they hit bottom. Then once again, you don't have to overdo it, but you want to make sure that these guys are snug. Not worrying with Loctite because the energy in these guys, but I am going to make sure they're snug. Nothing's coming out. This guy looks straight. Yes, indeed. Alright, there's our bolt carrier group. Nothing much in there. Slide the bolt, the hammer, whatever they call it. Now let's start working on the upper receiver. Many parts to this. Let's go ahead and let's pop in the chamber for your the firing pin assembly. This guy also works on your blowback, so we're gonna go and slide this in, wedge it in there. You can push it in manually as far as it'll go, and then if it gets tight, see mine's getting a little tight, we're not going to push on the actual chamber here for the valve. We're going to go ahead with our screwdriver and push on the base here in the slot, and we're going to go ahead and drive it home. Drive that home all the way to the end. You can inspect these two holes here. They should be clear and you should be able to see through them. And we're going to go ahead and punch in those pins. Maybe they're going manually. There we go. Oh yeah. You can see everything's lined up perfectly right now. Okay, this one, yeah. I'm going to have to finish these guys off. Oh, that guy's in. I'm going to give it a tap anyways. Check on each side. This guy can go in a bit more. bit of protrusion on that one, so I'm gonna just give it a little tap, maybe a bit more. There we go. That's in there. It's not wobbling, not moving. There we go. Now I guess we can put on the ejector port cover. Now I used an Allen key to keep the spring in place. There aren't many twists. There's no twists involved. Just make sure the straight pin, the straight part is in the firing direction, and your hook part is on this the stock side, hooking over. Now we're going to take our hinge and we're going to push. This is how I do it. I'm just going to push the Allen key out as I insert the hinge. You're going to get to a point where you got to make sure that you line it up into the spring. Make sure the spring, there we go. Push it all the way through. Now you're going to want to keep a little bit of loose here, because here's a spring alert and a delicate step. Where did I put my little screwdriver? There it is. So I'm going to use a little screwdriver here. And all I'm going to do, I'm going to lever this little thing backwards gently. The kink side of the spring. I'm going to just push it back and under the ejector port cover until it catches on the plastic inside. Just be gentle and don't kink anything. Can I get it from that? You just raise up the cover, make sure the hook gets back there, lower it into place, push your hinge through, and it should pop open on itself. There we go. Now just be careful, this hinge can fall out, but it's in there. It should be okay. And all right, now this is like the transfer chamber, because your chamber is kind of in the mag, but this guy is the transition between your magazine and the barrel. All right, so let's get this part into place. And now I still have my screws in there. Or gently lower it on top. Let's go ahead and drive these guys back. Here, you heard that click? That's where the thread fell into its thread. Now you just start these guys off. I'm applying pressure to make sure I don't cross thread anything or strip anything. Just get them started. Make sure they're all in their threads. Whoop, I fell out. Alright, now this last one, I'm going to go ahead and hit bottom. Now, basic cross threading all your screws until they all hit bottom. These ones, you don't have to overdo it. They're really small, so just give them a little love. Don't overdo it, because you will strip these. There we go, a bit of love on that guy. Oh, this guy's done. Nope, this guy's not done. There we go, he's done. And there we go on the final one. Now this part can slide right in to your upper receiver, and yeah, this is looking good. If I push down on this, the bolt catch ejector cover, there we go. Everything's functioning. All right, now let's get to the upper, the handrail. Now, so got our upper started. Now handrail. On all the models, no, on half the models, DPMS and R1, you're gonna want to put your barrel shim on your barrel. Oh no, actually, let's go ahead and do the handrail. We can just clip all these parts back together. Make sure that's snug. The left side goes on the left, and I will have to do some paint job touch-ups on this. Oh boy, yeah. Right goes on the right. I'm gonna go ahead and pop in my barrel shroud because it's in there for, it's gonna serve to keep this straight. Everything's structural and everything's gonna tighten down evenly. This is just plastic. Also on your A4-P and the Bushmaster, you got a shorter one, and sometimes these screws, the front screws, can interfere with these side things here. Just manufacturer leftovers. So we're gonna pop in the barrel shroud, and then we're gonna go ahead and start screwing in our handrails. There we go. Nope, that's that side. Gonna try and keep all the screws going in the same position I took them out. I'm gonna start with these two center ones because I want this handrail to flap to the outside. I don't want to pinch in any bubble or flapping on these side rails. So I'm just gonna start the screw off. Not gonna drive them home. I'm just gonna get them started and I'm applying pressure on the side rails so that the threads, as much as they can, will align with the original. There we go. We're going to drive them home once they're all threaded and seated. There we go, like that. Alright, on the Bushmaster, this is the part where you gotta stick in your front muzzle device plastic assembly thingy. You will have to put your barrel shim in the end of this. The A4-P, it's not really an issue, but the Bushmaster, you got to get this in, and then before you put these two front screws in, you got to pop it into the two slots right here on the front. So that's for the Bushmaster. You don't really have to worry about that right now. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and start putting these all the way. Oh, I could feel it. I can feel it shifting when I start to. So I'm gonna make sure there's still a bit of play on these screws while I finish driving all these front ones home. There we go. Make sure to keep it firmly, all the parts firmly squeezed together. Alright, well, I'm going to snug those in a bit more. Awesome. Let's go ahead and seat these. Correct. Alright, Plinkers, had to insert an edit so we could finish off this assembly. Now, as I said, we're about to assemble the upper receiver to the handguard. Now we got to get our barrel shim. Whoop, there it goes. Got to get our barrel shim inside our barrel shroud. Alright, so let's get this on the tip of your inner barrel. And you're just going to insert it all the way. It's easy to have it pointed towards a light so you can kind of look down and see where your plastic notch. There we go. We got it all the way seated. You're going to want to visually confirm this. Now, for the transfer chamber thingy, you could insert it to this and try and fiddle and let the barrel find the rubber bushing. But an easy way to do it, the only problem with this is you can't visually confirm that everything here seats directly into the upper. But like this, you don't really have to fiddle. It's easier to find. There you go. So that should be somewhat centered. It's a bit loose. Now don't just ram these two parts together. We're going to gently ease it in to make sure that we don't kink anything and get things out of place. Now, alright, I already got these two side screws going, and we're going to go ahead and seat those before we put in this little guy, because these ones are really what is the structural, what's holding everything together. And I don't really know the purpose for this, but it seems to line, it's to line up your upper rail, but if you do it properly, your upper rail should be already aligned once you screw in these two guys. So we'll just get them in part way. Don't squeeze them down yet. Make sure they're in their threads. There we go. Make sure it's proper, everything's properly positioned. And then you can go ahead and torque these down. And I'm just gonna, oh yeah, there's no wobble inside here either. Yeah, just go ahead and torque these down. So that's seated. That's seated. A little bit of love. Yep, a little bit of love. Put in this little guy here. Almost done, guys. Then we can get back to having fun plinking. A little bit of love on this, not too much because it's a small screw. Make sure that's flat and you don't feel any bumps. And there we go. Upper receiver is assembled. Go ahead and put together our bolt carrier assembly. With the charging handle. I'm going to slide that in here. There we go. Front pivot pin. Where did I put you? There you are. Pop you in. Whoops, went crooked. There we go. Let's pop out the rear takedown pin. And there's, yeah, that's it. Nice. We're going to verify all the mechanisms. Ejection port cover. I guess mag release. I'll do a quick test. That works fine. Bolt drops. Charge it again. Fire on full auto. Let's see if we can catch a bolt. There we go. And drop the bolt. Yeah. Awesome. Back on safety. There you go, guys. Full Crosman reassembly. I'll see you next time. Have fun plinking. Always be safe and wear eye pro.